So obviously this video is going to have a ton of spoilers for Marvel Spider-Man 2, which overall I think is a really great game. And while there are definitely a few things that are kind of cringy, like some of the dialogue,
the great electric spider,
side missions, and suit designs,
looks good.
It's definitely worth playing through if you haven't already. I think the narrative falls flat in a few places, but we're not talking about how it plays or even the overall story here. Today, we're talking about one thing it did extremely well, the symbiote. To actually get to see this storyline done well for once is such a breath of fresh air. There are a few ways I still think it could be improved, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, let's talk about why it's already so good, particularly when compared to Spider-Man 3 and the Venom movies. If you've seen my video about Spider-Man 2, you know I absolutely love the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, and I'm even something of an apologist for Spider-Man 3 myself. I still love you. But the symbiote is easily the worst part about that movie, and there are a ton of reasons why. Though I am forever grateful for the memes, I think the biggest reason so much of the Bully Maguire stuff is cringy is because it doesn't feel like a gradual transformation that Peter is in denial of. It feels intentional, like he is deciding he wants to be emo now. He literally buys himself a new outfit and changes his hair just to look the part. It's so over the top that it's extremely hard to take seriously. Second, you don't really get to see how the symbiote makes him stronger in any meaningful way. He's just angrier the whole movie. He gets no new abilities, and I'm pretty sure he still could have won every fight in that movie the way he was before. Third, the symbiote isn't really a character in any way. It's just a thing that corrupts the user. Marvel Spider-Man 2 does the Black Suit storyline some real justice by having a proper build-up before Peter even gets it, and then showing a really satisfying and natural descent into him losing control. I love that when Peter starts to get more aggressive, everything he says feels like something he has already been suppressing. Telling MJ that she should butt out because he's the hero, not her, is something I wanted him to tell MJ the entire first game, because she was kind of insufferable in Spider-Man 1. It was so annoying when she would get mad at him for the dumbest things like attacking a guy that was pointing a gun at her, or yelling at him because he stopped swinging around being a hero, literally just to eat dinner. The stuff he says to her in this game, he would never usually even allow the thought of to take shape, let alone use it to hurt her, but on some level the feeling exists there. And that's what makes the whole thing feel a little more real, since it's actually the worst parts of himself being brought out without it seeming like we're just watching a whole new character who's evil. They also absolutely nail fleshing out the symbiote while it's attached to Peter in this game. It feels like a real living thing, slowly revealing more of itself and having its own aspirations. When him and Harry first have the suit, it really feels like it's almost trying to hide the fact that it's alive until the host becomes attached enough to it that it won't fight back or be creeped out. They really just put the effort in to make you feel like it's an intelligent parasite waiting for Peter to let his guard down so it can slowly take more control of him. The scene where Peter's swinging and doesn't answer MJ's call just to keep ranting to himself, and the symbiote finally speaks to say kill Kraven, is so good. And the way Peter just goes completely silent like that kind of scared him, perfect. The MJ chase scene and finally leaning into the horror aspect of it, all great. And what I really like is the attachment the symbiote has to Peter. It starts on Harry, and once it goes to Peter, it just won't go back, It genuinely likes Peter and takes better care of him than his own girlfriend does. They actually have like a twisted kind of bond in the symbiote's eyes, and I just love it. And I think this interpretation of the black suit just really highlights even more what was lacking in the Raimi version. I also really love the fact they added in Harry needing the suit to live, because it's just a good way to show how far Peter is really being pushed by this thing. He won't give it back still. And when Peter finally breaks up with the symbiote, Venom actually feels like more of a real character than he does in his own movies. It's not much, but the rivalry he has with Kraven at this point, and the way he's almost hurt that Peter rejected him, makes him so much more interesting here than anything does in the Venom movies. And what really makes this stuff land here is that it's not shoved in your face too much. And since his new host is Harry, it really makes you wonder how much the stuff he's saying about being brothers is from Harry to Peter, from Venom to Spider-Man. It makes his relationship with Harry more interesting too, because he is clearly his second choice, and if we got to see more of them together down the line, it would have been really cool to see that explored. And what I find even crazier is that I could see this version of Venom potentially teaming up with Spider-Man again down the line, or turning into an anti-hero way more naturally than the Tom Hardy's version did. And it's set up without sacrificing the integrity of him as a villain. They didn't have to water down the evil stuff he does, or make him not really the villain here to do it either. I love the way he uses the voice of Harry's mom to, like, manipulate him into getting him more subscribers. Speaking of, it's ad time.
You don't have to do this. We understand. We understand.
You understand? Yeah. I'm not sure that Rick does.
If you could drop a like and a sub, I'd really appreciate it. These take a ton of time to make, and it encourages me to make more videos, so there you go. But anyway, this Venom could definitely really naturally team up with Spider-Man in the future. And yes, he dies in the game, but I wouldn't be surprised they undo this after all the talk about a Venom spinoff, or even if it's just for him to team up with Spider-Man to fight Carnage, who they tease for the next game. This part of the story was just done so well, and seeing Venom like this just makes the live-action version look even worse in comparison. And that's probably the biggest thing I don't understand about the Venom movies, and how they turned out the way they did. Because, I mean, when you pitch a movie about Venom and all the fans get excited, why do you think they got excited? You would think you'd have even a basic understanding of what makes people want to see this character. I like my fair share of buddy cop comedies, but why would you take the only chance this character has ever had to really shine in a big budget project that's all their own and use that great opportunity to make something so generic with it? I don't even hate the Venom movies. I think they're pretty funny on their own. It's just that it's such a misuse of that character. You could make that kind of movie about anyone. Why waste the opportunity to dive deep into Venom and show why people like him so much? When you say you're making a movie about this guy, people want to see this. Usually, when they do this thing with adaptations where they take it in a direction no one really asked for, it's because they want to shove some kind of political or social message in that ruins it. But that's not the case with Venom, which is why it's so confusing to me. It's just weird. I think the most interesting thing about Venom as a character is the relationship between the symbiote and the host. And that should be a dark kind of tug of war between them where they're influencing each other, and it's almost like he's trying to possess him, at least for the first movie. It should be dark and gritty. And I don't think it even needs to be R-rated for you to do it well. I know Venom can be used as an anti-hero in good ways, but you should establish him as a villain first before you do that. And he can still have funny moments without becoming a complete joke himself. You probably shouldn't throw a half-baked redemption arc into your first movie when Venom hasn't even done anything particularly evil yet. Because I think they really shot themselves in the foot here. Because at this point, if they crossed over Tom Hardy's Venom into the MCU Spider-Man movie, it wouldn't even make any sense for them to fight at all. I mean, Venom is a straight-up hero in his movies, and I don't think that's something that should have happened until at least the third installment in his series, and definitely not before fighting Spider-Man if that was in the plan. The relationship between Eddie and Venom in the movies is also just not nearly as interesting as it is between Peter and Venom in Marvel Spider-Man 2. It doesn't feel like Eddie is constantly struggling not to get corrupted, or having to stop himself from being aggressive. It doesn't really feel like it has much impact on his personality at all. They feel like two separate people that just share a body. And I feel like in a story like this, the main character kind of submitting to and then overcoming the worst parts of themselves is what provides all the emotional weight and makes it worth experiencing. Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Jedi Survivor are probably two of the best games I've played in a long time. I like them both so much because their stories are about Peter and Cal giving in to their dark side and failing themselves in a way. Because when that's done correctly, I think those are some of the most relatable and investing stories out there. With all that said though, there are still a few changes I would make that would really improve the story here in my opinion. I don't really like how much they nerfed Peter in this game. I think they did a little bit too much for my liking, but if they were going to go that route, I think they should have leaned into it more. I think Miles and Peter should have been failing at protecting New York at the start of this game. I think they should have really leaned into Peter aging and getting too old for this pretty much, and Miles' inexperience, and you just kind of shown that they're getting overwhelmed, which is crazy because there's two Spider-Men. Because I think if they are both there and still not able to keep up, it would really show why Peter feels he needs the black suit so bad. And to be fair, they do give you a little bit after the fact when they go into Peter's mind and show how broken up and guilt-ridden he still is about Aunt May and that he's carrying that around on his shoulders all day. But I would have liked a little more development. Also, overall in this game, Miles' storyline is pretty sidelined, which is understandable considering there isn't much you could give him, I think, that'd be as exciting as the black suit. I don't hate the Mr. Negative vengeance arc here, but it's pretty shallow when it didn't need to be. He kind of just realizes he shouldn't be out for blood, so he gets over it.
So that's that. And no harm done.
A couple simple changes could have made this much better. I also think if they were going to lean into the storyline of Miles being revenge-driven about Martin Lee, they really missed an opportunity to use that to make the Miles-Peter fight even better. There's one specific scene that comes to mind early on in the game when a bunch of people are about to die in the dock because Miles won't let go of Martin Lee to help them. You know, in the game, it all works out and everybody lives, but I think that moment could have been used a lot more effectively by going either of these two new directions. Number one being, if Miles unintentionally gets some of the people on the dock killed because of his obsession with Mr. Negative, and Peter is really comforting about it, but quietly on his own starts to lose faith in Miles as a partner. You know, have that be the reason why Peter starts to leave Miles out of the loop and stops calling him for help. I think it would have made the scene when people are about to die on the roller coaster even better as well, you know? Peter is about to fail in the same way that made him stop believing in Miles. Even he can't save everyone, and then right before those people die, the symbiote comes out of nowhere like a superhero and saves the day, already making Peter see it through rose-tinted glasses. And I mean, it's not awful as is or anything, but I think it would make it a lot better when Peter becomes so eager to team up with Harry over Miles all the time. And it would make the tension between the Spider-Men better too, because it'd be even more hurtful for Miles since he would know that that's the reason Peter doesn't call him anymore, because he doesn't trust him. Plus, when Peter's going full emo in the black suit, complaining about how Miles isn't good enough, how it's just easier for Peter to do things himself, it would feel a little deeper, since he would know that there's a kernel of truth in what he's saying. He does have that feeling on some level, he's just usually too good of a person to say it, or even think it to himself. And it'd be a great moment if he said something super hurtful to Miles about it once he has the black suit on, after we've seen how nice he was about it in his normal state. That's my first idea how to fix it. The other way is a lot more simple, and it's again, have at least one person die because of Miles, and then have him be really broken up about it for a few missions, have Peter basically give him a big emotional speech that gets him back on his feet. And it's, you know, really simple. The reason I think this would be a good change is so that when Miles finally helps get the symbiote off Peter, it feels less like, well, I saved you, hooray, because Act 2 is over, now let's go stop the bad guy, and more of like, at the start of the game, you picked me up when I was at my lowest, and now I'm gonna return the favor and pick you up.
You understand it's a partnership, not a dictatorship.
You know, they started the game as a team, they become distant, and getting the symbiote off Peter is them reconnecting, and I think this would sweeten that moment a bit. Oh, and something else I think would have been awesome is if, because the people dying and Peter becoming a monster, the city actually starts to turn on the Spider-Man. I mean, Jonah is always going to hate on them, but I mean even the citizens and the police, so that when you're free roaming, they start to act scared of Peter and start attacking him, you know? Kind of a side note, but I think it would have been really fun to see in the open world. The other pretty big change I would make to the story would be not to get rid of Black Cat so early, and she definitely wouldn't have a girlfriend in Paris. I would leave her around, and when Peter is starting to get corrupted by the symbiote, she would be the only person that actually encourages the way he's changing. And since every time he talks to MJ, Miles, Harry, or Dr. Connors, they're digging into him about the suit, he would start to become more distant from them and start asking Black Cat for help instead and doing missions with her, because she reinforces what the symbiote is telling him. Plus, I think it would just be cool to see him start leaning to her more too when MJ writes that negative article about him and all that. And this part of the story would either end with Peter doing something that scares even Felicia and she starts to realize this isn't him anymore, or just leave it where he starts to figure it out himself, and once he gets the symbiote off, have a cutscene between them where she's disappointed he got rid of it, and he's just like, hey, that wasn't me. I like the second version better, since Peter is getting set straight by other people so much already, and I kind of wish he had more autonomy in the story. And, you know, it's more of a hand in pulling himself out of this hole he's dug. But those are all the big changes I would make. Overall, man, there's so much I like about this game. I think the combat's super fun. I think Kraven is great. Venom is great. They kind of carry the story of the game. And the voice for Venom is just phenomenal. I mean, hearing that voice and then going watch a clip from the Venom movie, I didn't even know that I hated that voice until I heard this one. You know, that's how good this voice acting was. It completely ruined the old one for me. But that's going to do it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe, help me, I'm poor, all that stuff. And I'll catch you all in the next episode of HeadCannon.